15 best-selling rock albums in American history. In the music industry, a platinum record is considered a triumph. It means 1 million people believed in your sound, your vision, your story. But above platinum, there's another level entirely. A thin atmosphere where only giants survive. A place so rare that even legends struggle to reach it. Diamond status. 10 million albums sold inside the United States alone. Only a handful of artists in history have ever climbed that high, and even fewer have stayed there. Today, we're scaling the mountain of the 15 best-selling rock albums in American history, based on the latest 2024 and 2025 RIAA audits. But behind these massive numbers are stories of obsession, heartbreak, creative madness, tragedy, and pure musical brilliance. Some of these albums were nearly destroyed before they were ever released. Some were created during emotional collapse, and one of them didn't just dominate music, it permanently rewrote the rules of the industry. So let's begin the climb. 15. Steve Miller Band, Greatest Hits, 15 million. Some artists chase trends, others quietly define them. By the time Steve Miller released his Greatest Hits collection, his sound was already woven into the fabric of American life. Songs like The Joker, Fly Like an Eagle, and Take the Money and Run didn't just dominate radio, they became emotional landmarks. These tracks played at backyard barbecues, late-night highway drives, first dates, breakups, and everything in between. Miller's genius wasn't complexity, it was accessibility. His songs floated effortlessly, blending blues, rock, and soft psychedelia into grooves that felt instantly familiar. Radio programmers adored him, listeners trusted him, and slowly, without massive hype or controversy, his catalog stacked up 15 million sales. But critics often dismissed his music as lightweight, too smooth, too radio-friendly. What they missed was how difficult it is to make something sound effortless, because simplicity, when done correctly, becomes universal. And that universal appeal turned Steve Miller into one of the quiet kings of FM radio. But that laid-back groove was only the beginning, because the next album didn't just change rock, it changed how music itself was recorded, experienced, and understood. 14. Pink Floyd, The Dark Side of the Moon, 15+ million. Some albums are heard, others are experienced. The Dark Side of the Moon didn't just dominate charts, it lived there. Over 1,000 weeks on Billboard, nearly 2 decades of uninterrupted presence. No rock album before or since has come close. What made it different wasn't just the music, it was the atmosphere. Heartbeats, cash registers, clock alarms, echoes, tape loops, synth experiments. Pink Floyd wasn't just making songs, they were building an emotional universe that explored anxiety, madness, mortality, greed, and time itself. Listeners didn't simply play the album, they disappeared inside it. And then came the myth. Fans noticed something strange. When Dark Side was synced with The Wizard of Oz, moments aligned almost perfectly. Scene changes, emotional beats, musical swells. The theory exploded, turning the album into a cultural obsession that still survives decades later. Whether coincidence or cosmic accident, the legend only added to its mystique. But even Pink Floyd couldn't stay suspended in that dream forever, because the next project would push them into darker, heavier, more dangerous territory. 13. Led Zeppelin, Physical Graffiti, 16 million. By 1975, Led Zeppelin weren't just a band, they were a force of nature. Physical Graffiti arrived as a massive double album, bursting with sonic extremes. Funk, mysticism, thunderous hard rock, blues, folk, and Eastern influences collided into a sprawling masterpiece. Trampled Underfoot, In My Time of Dying, Kashmir. Each track felt like its own universe. But behind the power was exhaustion. Relentless touring, creative overload, fame that spiraled out of control. Zeppelin were recording wherever they could, mansions, mobile studios, castles, chasing inspiration while trying not to burn out completely. Their ambition nearly crushed them. And yet, somehow, the chaos produced brilliance. The album's massive sales were boosted by a controversial RIAA rule that counted each disc in a double album as a separate sale. But no accounting trick can fake cultural impact. Physical graffiti became one of rock's most revered statements, a raw display of what happens when genius collides with excess. But Zeppelin's reign was about to be challenged, because one American artist was preparing to unleash a misunderstood anthem that would echo across stadiums for generations. 12. Bruce Springsteen, Born in the USA, 17 million. At first glance, Born in the USA looks like a celebration. Explosive drums, towering synths, a fist-pumping chorus that sounds patriotic. It became one of the most misinterpreted songs in music history, because beneath the stadium roar lived a brutal truth. This album wasn't celebrating America, it was questioning it. Springsteen wrote from the perspective of Vietnam veterans, blue-collar workers, and broken dreamers. People crushed by a system that promised them everything and delivered heartbreak. Politicians tried hijacking the song as a campaign anthem, completely missing its meaning. But audiences felt its emotional weight. 17 million albums later, Born in the USA stood as the defining document of Heartland rock, where pride and pain collided in raw, honest storytelling. But while Bruce ruled the stage, another artist was quietly building perfection in total secrecy, and what he created would permanently change how music could be made. 11. Boston. Boston, 17 million. This album shouldn't exist. Tom Scholz wasn't backed by a massive studio budget. He wasn't surrounded by elite producers. He wasn't chasing trends. He was an MIT-trained engineer working alone in his basement, obsessively perfecting every note, every layer, every tone. For years. His label had no idea. Scholz secretly built his entire debut album piece by piece, using homemade equipment, experimental recording techniques, and sheer technical brilliance. When the record company finally heard it, they assumed it was recorded in elite studios. It wasn't. Boston became one of the greatest sonic achievements in rock history, selling over 17 million copies and redefining what independent recording could accomplish. Its massive guitars, soaring harmonies, and pristine production turned home studios into legitimate creative battlegrounds. But the explosion of arena rock was just beginning, because the next band would create one of the most universally recognized anthems ever recorded. 10. Journey, Greatest Hits, 18 million. Some songs transcend decades. Don't Stop Believin' didn't just become a hit, it became a cultural ritual. Played at weddings, sporting events, karaoke nights, graduation ceremonies, championship games, and emotional moments across generations. But Journey's success wasn't accidental. Steve Perry's soaring vocals, combined with Neil Sean's melodic guitar work, created a sound built for emotional release. Their music carried hope, longing, and optimism, emotions that never go out of style. Decades later, The Sopranos finale resurrected their legacy overnight. Streaming numbers exploded. Younger generations embraced their catalog. Suddenly, Journey wasn't nostalgia, they were timeless. But optimism can only last so long, because the next band arrived with danger in their eyes and chaos in their veins. 9. Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction, 18 million. This album nearly failed. Radio stations refused to play it. MTV hesitated. Retailers worried. Guns N' Roses didn't look safe. They didn't sound polished. They didn't behave predictably. They were volatile, violent, reckless, dangerous. Welcome to the Jungle wasn't just a song, it was a warning. Slash's razor-sharp riff echoed like sirens. Axl Rose's shrieking howl sounded feral. The entire album felt like a collision between punk rage and hard rock swagger. Slowly, word spread, then exploded. 18 million albums later, Appetite for Destruction stood as the most dangerous debut in rock history. It wiped away glam metal excess and dragged raw authenticity back into the spotlight. But chaos wasn't the only force shaping rock. Sometimes heartbreak creates masterpieces, and no album proves that better than the next. 8. Fleetwood Mac, Rumors, 21 million. Few albums carried this much emotional tension. During the recording of Rumors, Fleetwood Mac was falling apart. 2 romantic relationships inside the band were collapsing. Affairs, betrayals, emotional warfare. And yet, instead of destroying them, the pain became their fuel. Every song became a confession. Dreams, Go Your Own Way, The Chain. These weren't performances. They were emotional confrontations set to flawless melodies. The band turned private heartbreak into universal connection, selling over 21 million copies and creating one of the most emotionally honest albums ever made. But while Fleetwood Mac turned pain into poetry, another artist was about to define American songwriting itself. 7. Billy Joel, Greatest Hits Volume 1 and 2, 23 million. Billy Joel didn't write for critics. He wrote for people. Taxi drivers, factory workers, dreamers, outsiders, small-town kids chasing city lights. From Piano Man to Uptown Girl, his songs became emotional time capsules of American life. His melodies felt theatrical, his stories felt intimate, his voice felt familiar. This collection didn't just sell records, it became a soundtrack to millions of lives. But even storytelling couldn't reach the psychological depths of what came next. Because Pink Floyd was about to build a wall, both literal and emotional. 6. Pink Floyd, The Wall, 23 million. This wasn't an album, it was an emotional fortress. Roger Waters poured isolation, trauma, fear, and abandonment into a massive rock opera that explored how emotional pain builds barriers between us and the world. Another Brick in the Wall, Comfortably Numb, Hey You. Each song exposed psychological fractures rarely explored in mainstream music. The album's theatrical stage production pushed live performance into cinematic territory, and audiences responded. 23 million copies later, The Wall stood as one of the most ambitious projects ever attempted in rock history. But while Floyd constructed walls, the Beatles were tearing down boundaries. 5. The Beatles, The White Album, 24 million. This album sounds like 4 solo artists colliding, because that's exactly what it was. By 1968, the Beatles were fracturing creatively. Each member brought radically different visions. The result was a chaotic explosion of genres: folk, metal, blues, avant-garde, pop, and experimental noise. Helter Skelter, Blackbird, While My Guitar Gently Weeps. It felt unpredictable, unfiltered, raw, and that's why it mattered. This album didn't aim for polish, it aimed for honesty. And 24 million sales later, it remains one of the most daring statements in music history. But Led Zeppelin was about to answer with something even more mysterious. 4. Led Zeppelin 4, 24 million. No band name, no album title, no singles listed, just 4 cryptic symbols. Led Zeppelin 4 became a myth before anyone even heard it, and then Stairway to Heaven happened. 8 minutes of spiritual ascension, mystical lyrics, explosive climax. A song so legendary that radio stations refused to stop playing it. The album fused thunderous power with ethereal beauty, redefining what rock could be, and its mysticism only deepened its legend. But rock's next evolution wouldn't be spiritual. It would be cynical, dark, and cinematic. 3. Eagles, Hotel California, 26 million. This album captured the death of innocence, the collapse of the 1960s dream, the corruption of fame. Every note felt haunted. The twin guitar solo, the cryptic lyrics, the eerie atmosphere. Hotel California became a metaphor for excess, addiction, and spiritual entrapment. 26 million sales later, it stood as one of the most haunting documents in rock history. But tragedy would soon strike another band, and from that grief would emerge one of the greatest comebacks ever recorded. 2. AC/DC, Back in Black, 27 million. Bon Scott's death should have ended AC/DC. Instead, it forged them into legends. Grief turned into rage, pain turned into power, and in just 60 days, they recorded Back in Black, a thunderous tribute to their fallen brother. Every riff hit harder, every chorus roared louder. The album stripped rock down to its purest form: rhythm, power, and unstoppable energy. 27 million copies later, it stands as the highest-selling studio rock album ever made. But one album towers even above that. One collection dominates all. 1. Eagles, their greatest hits, 38 million. No album in American history has sold more, 38 million copies. This wasn't just success, this was total cultural saturation. Take It Easy, Desperado, One of These Nights, Lion Eyes. Song after song defined entire decades. Their harmonies felt effortless, their melodies felt eternal, and their commercial dominance reshaped how record labels understood mass appeal. But beneath the success lived intense internal tension, lineup changes, ego battles, and creative clashes. Stories that continue to fascinate fans today. And maybe that's the true magic of these albums. Behind every perfect melody lies chaos. Behind every masterpiece hides sacrifice. Emotional close. These 15 albums didn't just top charts, they shaped lives. They captured heartbreak, rebellion, hope, pain, joy, and transformation. They became emotional timestamps, freezing moments that listeners still return to decades later. And the wildest part? Some of these albums almost never existed. But fate, obsession, and raw creativity refuse to let them disappear. And maybe that's why we still listen.
Thank you, my viewer. I hope you keep it here on my channel for more discoveries on all the celebrities' untold journeys. Like, comment, and subscribe on Hajararama channel. Thank you so much.